Hi, my name is Eliza, and welcome to my podcast. I am a survivor advocate for those affected by human trafficking, and I am also a survivor of human trafficking. And today on my podcast, we have a very special guest. Literally nobody in the Arab community or anywhere else who's a sellout. Masa Maga, a leftist, shitlib, Fuslam, pronouns are sha, Ria, but is also willing to go by he, him, his. BLM, All Lives Matter, an incel, and a thought leader. He's a podcast host, and his name is Siraj Hashmi. Thank you for joining me, Siraj.
Thank you for having me, Eliza.
I tried to say your Twitter bio with a straight face. It was really hard.
You know, you did pretty well.
Did I?
Yeah, but it's pronounced Fuslam, okay?
Okay, I didn't know. What's Fuslam? I don't even know what Fuslam is.
It was a play on the Ryan Long, Danny Polishek bit that they did about cops back in the, a decade plus ago on cop shows versus cop shows today. And basically one of the bits was, there was a terrorist attack, and that's what Ryan Long says, and his partner Danny, and they're both dressed up as cops. Danny's like, "What does it rhyme with Fuslam?" So based on that.
Okay, well, I wasn't hip to that, so I said Fuslam, which
it's okay.
A whole new wave. So for folks that don't know, Siraj and I are good friends. He is one of my only friends, and I love him very much. So I wanted to get that out of the way. That was your Twitter bio. For anyone that doesn't know who you are, that's maybe listening to this podcast for the first time or just now getting introduced, is your camera going out of focus?
At the moment?
It was for a second, Beeps.
Was it?
Yeah, for a second it started going out of focus. It's all right.
What is a podcast if my camera doesn't go out of focus?
Did your camera go out of focus when you do like corporate news? Like when you go on the news?
Literally every single time it goes out of focus when I have no control over it. I'm literally sitting still. I haven't moved left, right, front, back, forward or backwards.
Right.
It just does it. It has a mind of its own. It does this. My camera is literally Islamophobic.
Not only is your camera very Islamophobic, it also honestly is probably sent by the FBI to destroy you, Siraj.
I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. Feds are watching.
The feds are always watching. They're probably watching this right now. And also, for the record, if anyone's just simply listening to this podcast, Siraj and I are dressed for the occasion, because I told Siraj I did not want him to ruin my brand by wearing his usual attire of a Habibi Bros t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, don't come to my podcast and ruin my brand. So you got a fresh, crispy fade on your hair, and you're also dressed for the occasion. I'm dressed for the occasion, but it's just a random Tuesday for me. So this is what I was going to wear anyway. But so that was your Twitter bio. A lot of folks know you from doing The List on Twitter. And now you have an amazing podcast and some other great things going on. I don't necessarily want to spend too much time on talking about The List, because I feel like everyone that talks to you talks about The List, but really, really briefly, just sort of break down for folks exactly what The List is on Twitter.
The List is a power ranking of people who need their phones taken away based on bad tweets. So it could be anything from cringe to, just using, over the top hyperbole, overreacting, melting down. Basically, people who really are in need of a timeout. And it's designed to save people from themselves. And I think a lot of people forget that, because a lot of people's careers were upended by Twitter. And it was mostly designed as a check to some of the crazier personalities on there. And it really just started organically. It started with George Conway dunking on his wife, Kellyanne Conway, in December of 2019 during the first Trump impeachment saga. And it just you dunk on your wife in public, that's a big no-no. You need that phone taken away. And then it just became a thing. I started doing it. I started it the first day. I acted like it was, an ongoing thing. So I had like George Conway #1, Donald Trump #2. I think I had like Charlie Kirk #3. I was at #4, just because the obvious. I mean, like if I'm creating a list, I'm spending too much time on Twitter. I need my phone taken away. And basically, it started at 5 people, then expanded to 10 later that week. And I just kept doing it. And then when COVID lockdowns came in, maybe about 4 or 5 months later, everyone was on Twitter and everybody was losing their mind. And I had a full-time job. I was at the Washington Examiner, still trying to do, well, nothing really, because let's be honest, I don't do anything.
I bet you did something, Beebs. I mean, you got hired.
I had a podcast. I did have a podcast with the Examiner. I did make a lot of video content.
Wait. Before we even get into that, because I have so many questions about your time at the Examiner. But literally, Siraj, so I got on Twitter late, right before COVID. Like this is right, like I joined Twitter for fun, like right before COVID. So I always thought that Twitter was insane, but I never fully knew how insane Twitter was until I joined. No, literally, no, because this is why I know it's insane. Because I'm eccentric and extra and fully like, I mean, a little bit of trauma and, just like a lot of like extra weird things. And I seem so composed and normal on that platform. Like literally, I see people say things. I'm like, whoa, that's something you said in public.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Perception is reality. Right. I mean, that's kind of we all put out an image to the public of what we want others to see. And
we're putting out a pretty good image today, Siraj.
Yeah, no, but ultimately, social media seems to design for people to hone in on their worst impulses and basically draw attention to themselves. And they get the endorphin hits as soon as they get that engagement, those retweets and likes. It's a difficult drug to wean yourself off of. I would be remiss if I would be remiss to say I'm not addicted to Twitter. I wake up every morning.
No, and I'm addicted too. And actually, one thing in preparing for this interview that I think is so funny is that you and I are both on Twitter so frequently. I don't text you, I DM you. We talk through DM like normal friends would call, text. We would just talk through DM because we're both on Twitter and we know that we will see it quicker, probably more quickly if we do it through DM. And we're just both on there. And it's hard to explain unless you're part of that culture. But you know what's weird, Siraj, is like, I feel like, okay, so I do like when tweets do well for me, especially if it says something powerful. Always my shit posts do better than anything else. So like usually I'll say these, some like real, in my mind, like global changing things. And those aren't ever the ones that do super well. But in my mind, the way I've built my platform has been to raise awareness for serious, like issues that I think are very serious, human trafficking, domestic violence, sexual assault, and also to raise awareness about missing children and missing individuals. So literally every time I get new followers, I'm not really thinking about me. I'm thinking about, oh, cool, this means more eyes on this missing child, on these missing children. Hopefully they can be found more quickly and then returned back home. But everybody else is just out here fully wild. It's like they don't think. They don't think before they post.
Right. And that's why the list is that's why the list is great. That's why because of that, the list will always be around. And even after, I decide to say pass it on or stop doing it, I know somebody's going to want to take up the mantle. So it's going to be something that I hope sticks around for quite some time.
Have you lost friends? Have you lost friends through doing the list?
Absolutely. 100%.
Real life friends.
Real life friends.
If you put me on the list, I think it could strengthen our friendship, but only after. I don't know what I do.
So the whole
why have you never put me on the list? Why have you never put me on the list?
Why have I never put you on the list? I mean, you haven't posted anything that's just egregious. Like I
Exactly.
know who you are. I know your intentions. And I think you'd have to go, take a sharp turn,
Mhm.
like just come out of left field and say something absolutely fully wild, like endorsing violence, stuff that you
Uh-huh.
obviously advocate against.
Mm.
So if you went down that route, then I might consider it, but I probably would talk to you first and be like, are you serious right
Are you okay?
now? Yeah.
Are you okay?
Is someone holding a gun to your head, Eliza? Do they have your family?
It'd be a 3 a.m. tweet, probably. So back
Wow.
to losing real life friendships.
Mhm.
Do you want to talk about that or you don't want to talk about it?
Well, I mean, it was been very public. I mean, everybody kind of knows about the whole episode with Waj. Um, he was someone I knew in real life. It was family, and it I've spoken about it. Basically, I didn't even put him on a list. I had put him on a list prior to that, and he saw me as sort of harmless, and there wasn't like a big deal there. But it wasn't until like the election in 2021, after Virginia elected all Republican down ballot in the governorship, lieutenant governorship, and the attorney general races. Glenn Youngkin winning to become governor, Winsome Sears becoming lieutenant governor, and I believe I think it's Joseph Miaras or Jose Miaras. In any event, one of the things that Waj said was that white supremacy was at work in Virginia, and Virginians literally elected the first Black woman to serve as lieutenant governor, and I think the first Hispanic to serve as attorney general. So I pointed that out. It wasn't even a less tweet. It was a disagreement. I was saying, well, Winsome
I'm
Sears
not
was just
laughing.
elected,
I'm
but
not
okay.
laughing at the idea of white supremacy. I'm laughing at how ludicrous of a take that is. Like,
Oh, it is. It's absolutely
it's
ludicrous.
like
And I put him on the
so
list.
off the rails. And it's
I,
also to the NPC script. Like the NPC script, you know what I mean, Siraj. It's like they have a script and they go down the checklist
yeah,
and
to see what sticks.
it's just yeah, well, and it's such from the script. And it just so you two got into a fight, ended real life
It wasn't
friendship.
even a fight. It wasn't, I mean, like, it wasn't a fight at the beginning. And then he basically threatened to dox my wife. And I wasn't cool with that. And especially because we knew each other in real life. And I had never actually spoken to him about it. And then I basically responded publicly that, I mean, his daughter had stage 4 liver cancer. And I volunteered. I was one of many volunteers. I was one of many volunteers to donate part of my liver for her liver transplant. And so I pointed that out, and that's when he lost his shit. And then he just fully doxed my wife, said I was using his child as a shield. And basically he had a full-on meltdown, and he hasn't stopped rage tweeting about it since. He's even done stuff even as late as this past week. But I think one of the most harmful parts about that is, even after having explained that to people that I know, people within my family, you know, the frustration is that there are people who still don't see it my way. No, they don't they don't give me the benefit of the doubt like they used to. And, I get hurt by that. So it's like, for example, um, basically Waj came out with his book. I had some people send, into group chats that they were, they bought his book, and that's when I like basically like had to confront them, be like, do you realize what he did to me and my wife? And it was like they never, it's like it never registered with them for the first, it's like they never heard it before. So that's been frustrating. So
Well, you
And
had a
honestly, the demonization like, against my wife is just, it's so over the top. It really is.
Well, just to unpack that a little bit, you've had a pretty, I think you've had one of the most interesting lives I've ever heard, and definitely complex situation going on in your personal life. So you're, let's see what, let me see if I have my Siraj bingo card information right. So your father's
Sure.
from Pakistan.
Hmm.
Your mother is Caucasian, but from, I don't know where.
Connecticut.
Connecticut. Okay. And they have a cool love story, right?
Yes.
An
So
interesting and cool love story.
they met in the mid 1970s when my dad first immigrated to the country in 75. My mom was going to nursing school. He had already already graduated medical school, was going into general surgery residency at St. Francis Hospital in Hartford, Connecticut. And, it's the height of the 70s, disco era, right? I don't know what the dynamic was like between men and women during that time, but especially for my dad, who, if you see him, he looks like a Pakistani member of the Beatles. He's got that, that swooped hair, that Beatles hair, but then he's got like a thick handlebar mustache.
BB,
And
why don't you grow
glasses.
that hair?
I did have that hair for a while. Then I
Pixar, it
hate
didn't
that.
happen. Pixar, it didn't happen.
I'll show you. It's my mom said I look like a Kennedy. That's how. So, and I look like a baby. Anyways, so to the story of how my parents met, basically, when my mom's girlfriends who were in nursing school with her, they like came up there and said, "You have to meet this guy. He is the worst disco dancer you'll ever see."
Dang.
So she's like, "All right, I guess I'll, see how bad this guy's disco dancing was." And surely enough, his disco dancing was absolutely horrible. But apparently that was enough. Like it was like right there, love at first sight. She almost knew from the get-go that they were gonna get married. So
I kind of like that. I kind of like that.
yeah, it's a cute story. And my both sides, both families like gave them a lot of pushback. For one, my mother grew up and was raised Catholic. She left the church at 16. She converted to Islam in 77. They had a nikah shortly thereafter, which is the Islamic marriage contract, but they had an official ceremony with their families and friends in 79. But it was difficult, particularly for my father, because while my mother converted to Islam, she was not seen as one of them. She was not Pakistani. She didn't have a firm understanding of the culture. And so she got a lot of pushback from my aunts and her in-laws. And it took a lot of fighting and confrontation. Like my dad was excommunicated from from his family for like a whole year.
Wow.
And it was tough on him, but once they finally brought him back into the fold, or they reestablished connections, then things got tremendously better. And there's still some holdouts, but I think overall most of the issues that had existed beforehand have subsided for the most part. So it almost seems like I'm reliving what my dad went through now, just
I was
because.
just thinking that, but I wasn't going to say it. I was literally
Well, it's just wild because both my parents are Muslim, but they come from different parts of the world. And I ended up marrying a Jewish woman who.
And you're a practicing Muslim. So
and I'm a
just for the
practicing
record,
Muslim.
you're a practicing Muslim. So, Beebs, do you pray 5 times? Do you pray?
I try to. It's very difficult. It's probably one of the harder things I've tried to keep up with. I don't, like as public as I am about my faith, I don't really talk so much about like my spirituality. And but my faith is fairly strong. But the most important thing is I it's, to me, it's not so much about praying as it is how you treat other people. And I've known tons of people, tons of Muslims who would pray 5 times a day, but
Mm.
were just shitty human beings. And so I decided to just put more effort into being good to other people and treating others the way I want to be treated. And I think that has, for me, that's made me happier. That's reaffirmed my faith, and I still believe strongly in God, and many of the tenets of Islam. There are things I disagree with, but it's just, it's not about like specific individual rituals or tenets per se. What it is to me is just strengthening your relationship with your creator, and that to me is what it's always been about. It's what's united me with my wife, because she's on the same level. It's not like she goes to temple every Saturday or on Shabbat, but we share each other's traditions and customs. She will celebrate Ramadan and Eid with me. I'll celebrate the high holy days with her, Rosh Hashanah. We'll observe Yom Kippur. We'll celebrate during Passover and Hanukkah. And it's great. I love the sharing of our different faiths, and we unite on that level where we don't have to worry about one of us being Jewish or the other one being Muslim. We're just two people who deeply love each other and want the best for each other, and we'll do anything to protect each other. So,
Which is really cute. I mean, she's obviously a saint because she deals with you all the time, and I mean, so I don't know if Jewish people believe in saints or whatever, but she's saint in my book.
they do not.
Siraj is like the brother that I never wanted. I'm not uptight, but I am a little. And I'll go check on his page, his profile, and I'll just be so, because the truth is, Siraj, okay, so your Twitter is like funny. You got a lot of memes, you got a lot of shit posting. You're doing the list to take people's phones because they need to think about their actions. And because their takes are so wild. And then but behind the scenes, or I guess, and not behind the scenes, but you actually really do have a big heart. And that's why I understood what you were saying about really it's how you act, not necessarily, how you wanted to just be a good person, and that's how you show your faith. And that is truly how I see you. You are so giving, so kind, such a good friend, and such a good man, honestly. And I just love so many things about you. But then I go visit your Twitter, and I literally feel like I need to reevaluate my life and my ability to pick friends. Like, one of the reasons that I made a dress code for this podcast is because I just go on Twitter. Keep in mind, I have relatively, for the most part, very serious Twitter. I go on Twitter. Siraj is on his podcast, shirtless, doing things that I'm not comfortable talking about right now. Also had a wig on at one point. I'm like, where did this idiot get this wig? And I'm like,
I have it if you want to see it.
No, that is not part of the dress code. That is not part of the dress code. That wig is not a part of it. But no, you really are an awesome person. And I think, do people think that, their impression from you from Twitter or maybe your interviews or your podcast, do you think that people get a specific impression of you and talk crazy to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had to ignore, for the most part, basically everything that people say about me, because if I spent time on it, I would probably just drive myself insane. So,
Oh, you're
that's why
insane already. You're insane already.
I'm insane already, but my Twitter bio is written the way it is because everyone's tried to define me and pigeonhole me and put me into a box, and I just won't let them. So
politically, you used to be on the left, right?
very, very much so.
Okay, now when you say that, because we've talked about this a little bit before, but I'm not even sure what that means. How on the left were you? What are you talking?
In
Like Green
2016,
New Deal?
I voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016 in the primary, and then Hillary Clinton in general.
Okay. And you thought Hillary Clinton was a good choice for why?
So actually, interestingly enough, that's when I first started the Examiner, and I voted for Barack Obama twice. I saw like basically, I'll tell you this in just a moment. Basically, the way I looked at the two choices was like, me as a journalist, can I spend the next 4 years defending Trump for this publication and his policy choices, or can I spend the next 4 years attacking Hillary and her policy choices? I was like, I think I could do Hillary. I don't know if I could do Trump, so I voted for Hillary. That was my thinking going into it. And then I realized that there actually is a professional loser class that specifically voted the way I did, simply because they prefer to be in business rather than have things go well for the country. And I was like, well, that's a very defeatist way of looking at things. And why the hell did I even do that? So from then on out, I tried to be as objective as possible. And now it's more like I'll vote for a Republican, I'll vote for a Democrat every now and then if I think they're a decent candidate, or but for the most part, I haven't voted for a Democrat in quite some time. So that should say everything right there. But to give you an idea of, so when I first started to break in this liberal facade, or whatever these liberal beliefs that I had, I think it was in 2012 when Obama was up for re-election, and my wife, who at the time was in law school and then campaigned for the Romney campaign, which regrets quite a bit, but she basically tried to highlight how the media was lying to us. And I remember saying this to her specifically, like almost flabbergasted, like, but why would they lie to us? Like, what do they stand to gain from all this? Like, this was like, again, this is 10 years ago. Okay. I had no idea what I was getting into. And if you were wondering,
because you and your wife have been together for a while, so I want to say that
we've been married for just over 2 years, but we've been together for 15.
Right.
Since college, and since sophomore year of college. So we were both 19 years old when we started dating. I'm 34 now.
That's
and yeah, it was weird because the first time I ever saw her, I was like, just walking down one of the down the campus when we went to Dickinson. I was just like, I think I'm gonna marry that woman. So yeah.
I wonder what she thought about you.
Oh, she thought I was incredibly immature, but
that would be past tense, Siraj. You are incredibly immature.
Touche.
Okay, so you thought that the corporate press was totally not lying, because that's just how you felt, and that's what you'd been conditioned to think. And then what changed that for you?
So I'd say it wasn't until I really got into the journalism industry that I realized how much people in the corporate press lie about.
Why did you go into journalism? We've never talked about that, which is hilarious. We talk about other stuff, like I like my puff sleeves and my tiara. But no, what made you go into journalism? Did you want to be a journalist? Or are you still kind of out of it?
No, I never wanted to be a journalist. I had no idea that I would even become one. So I went to college to try to go to medical school. So I was a pre-med bio major. I went to Georgetown for a year after I graduated from Dickinson, still trying to go down that track.
Wait, you were going to be a what? A med major?
As a biology, pre-medicine.
I'm so glad you didn't go into that field. The thought of you with any type of medical power is terrifying.
I really wanted it. I wanted it badly. And then
But want
there
and
was
being good
just,
at it is two different things. I
that's
would love
right.
to play for the WNBA, but it's probably not going to happen. So
You would play for you wanted to play for the WNBA.
I love sports, Siraj.
Why is this
Don't
the
let
first time
this
I'm hearing about it?
don't let this glamorous aesthetic fool you, Siraj. I know quite a bit about sports. Little do you know.
Okay, all right, all right. Well, anyways, I wanted, after I decided I no longer wanted to go into medicine when I hit my quarter life crisis of 25 again in 2012,
BB.
I wanted to go into sports journalism. I wanted to become a sports broadcaster. I thought
That I could have seen you do.
ESPN was the dream. So I started working I worked at a small sports media startup in 2013 that focused on high school sports in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area, focused on high school and basketball. And then I moved my way to another startup. And that was a little bit of more, I would say, feature reporting. And I did a lot of on-camera work for both of those outlets. Then I got hired by Sirius XM Radio in the fall of 2014, and that sort of changed a lot because that sort of opened my network to the political journalism world. And then I started to think, politics isn't so bad. Maybe I could just try this. I always had a familiarity with politics, but it was never like I hated it so much that I never wanted to actually be a political journalist or even like engage with people in political debate. Like I didn't know what I was talking about. I was, for all intents and purposes, I was a dumbass. I mean, I still am, but like I was even more so then. So as things sort of progressed, I ended up getting a gig. I ended up getting hired by the Examiner in 2016, mainly for my video work because I do a lot of video. And I'd say possibly the only reason I ever got hired or I ever actually kept a job with the Examiner for two reasons. One, for video, and two, it's because I'm Muslim. The
So
Examiner,
back
yeah.
up really quickly. When you say video,
Mhm.
do you mean like the video that you have right now that's not fully in focus at all times? Like what video are we talking about here? Because you got hired for something you can't even do for your own podcast.
That's what's really funny is because the irony in all of it is that I have such a bad camera. Yeah, I worked in video for nearly a decade, and I worked with like Canon DSLR cameras, like filming in manual focus settings, setting the ISO, setting the aperture. It was one of those things where like I got really good at it, and then it's like learning a language. I just threw it all out the window and decided I don't want to do I don't want to do this. I'm gonna be on a Logitech webcam and go blurry every 3 seconds. So
That's all right, Siraj.
yeah.
Sometimes you have to take two steps forward and then take a couple steps back just to humble yourself a little bit. Maybe you were out here balling out of control too hard with the other cameras. So you got the jobs at, so you got the job at, are you serious about being hired because you're Muslim? Seriously?
I wouldn't say that is the reason I got hired, but I think that's one of the reasons why I remained employed and probably
But how does that
wasn't
even come
fired.
up? Like I wouldn't look, maybe your name looks, uh,
Oh, I mean, it wasn't like I kept it any secret. I made jokes about, terrorism and being Muslim all the time, but like in the manner of like being but in the manner of being self-deprecating, like specifically like, you know, office humor. It was never designed to be like harmful to anyone else. It's always meant to make fun of me. So, that self-deprecating sense of humor that let people that let people a lot of people's guard down. And I had a lot of friends at the Examiner who specifically thought uh, they actually took me seriously because I while I was very, affable and and comedic with them, when I actually did my work, I was pretty serious. So it's like I flipped the switch. So I did a podcast with the Examiner for a little over a year, well, maybe almost like a year and a half, called Hashing It Out. And that was something that I designed from scratch I even made the beat for it, Eliza.
That's so cute.
And
So I forgot to say that in the beginning of this podcast is that you actually made the music, the beginning intro music for my podcast. And it
yeah,
wasn't that you made it for my podcast. It was that you sent me some beats a long time ago. And then I basically told you, hey, I'm going to use one of your beats for my podcast. I'm going to use this one. Is that okay? And then I had already told everyone that I was already using it before you even said yes, because I knew if you said no, I'd just bully you. So, but yeah, you made the music and I love your music. I love your beats. And now you're kind of starting to make more music for folks. So I think that's so cool. I'm so bummed I freaking missed that in the beginning. I was trying so hard to say the beginning part of your bio with a straight face that I forgot that crucial, important part.
looks like we're gonna have to start over, Eliza, from the very
We're
beginning.
not starting over, Siraj Hashmi. Um, so you worked for how long did you work at the Examiner?
About 5 years.
Oh, that's a decent time. And so throughout that process, you realized that the corporate press is not always what it seems.
No, not at all. In fact, I realized it was basically all about making money. And like anything, that's what it is. You know,
Do you remember, was
any
there a moment, Siraj? Was there like a moment that you remember where it sort of clicked? Or was it just a slow drip where you're like,
I mean, I know that for quite some time, I've known that when it comes to the corporate press, ultimately the bottom line is what matters the most. It wasn't until I guess it really started to hit at the Examiner and impact me that I was like, all right, this is bullshit. I'm out. And it centered around my podcast, hashing it out, because the idea that they brought in some consultant to help them monetize video. And I was making a good product. I was very proud of what I was doing. And I brought on, guests. I brought on people. I brought on politicians. I brought on other journalists. I brought on friends. I brought on, policy analysts, you name it. And we had a lot of great conversations talking about things that were really important to a lot of people. And especially focusing on issues that people didn't really have a large familiarity with. And as it progressed, the consultant started to sort of reduce my role with other videos. But when it came to my podcast, I was like, all right, as long as they don't touch my podcast, I'm okay. And then they came for my podcast about like 2 months after he was hired. And they specifically wanted me to interview people within the newsroom and topics that only they chose. I was like, well, that's 100% editorial control. I can't let that happen. And I pushed back on it. And they said, well, it's either this or the podcast is canceled. So, I mulled it over for like 10 minutes. Talked to my wife about it. I was like, yeah, I think it's time to go my own way. So I just sent them a letter of resignation, peaced out. And everyone thinks I was fired. I mean, it was funny because there were times in which I almost did get fired. Not for my actual work, but definitely for what I tweeted. So
so were you already tweeting sort of based when you were at the Examiner? What were you tweeting about before?
I was still
Sure,
dunking
those
on
are-
people. I was still dunking on people, and I was still dragging people, and I was still doing the list. The main difference was the times that I got in trouble was when I would make fun of even things happening at the Examiner. So I literally didn't have a filter. And there are a couple times where I'd make jokes that the boss was not appreciative of. So like, for example, one of the reporters there put out a story about how they found some rancher on the southern US border with Mexico found a prayer rug on his ranch. So that was evidence that like ISIS was infiltrating the country through the southern border. And then I tweeted out something along the lines of like, hey, that's mine. Can I have it back? That did not go over so well. Sorry.
Okay. So Maybe not the best decor for a professional jobs, Raj.
Probably not, but it got even better when in early 2020, when I came and pranked Fox News. And that was really funny because I had been on Fox News multiple times as a subject of, multiple interviews commenting on different political stories of the day. And what happened was in January 2020, President Trump and Vince Vaughn met during the college football championship. And someone, I think a former Deadspin writer, posted a video of the two meeting. So I tweeted out something along the lines of, ladies and gentlemen, I regret to inform you, Vince Vaughn is canceled. Thinking that like, oh, I am not the one canceling it. I am just pointing out that he's about to be canceled.
Right.
A Fox News freelance writer, or I don't know if he was actually staffed, but he wrote a story for Fox that got published the next morning, highlighting me as the leader of getting Vince Vaughn canceled. Like I was the liberal leader specifically trying to cancel Vince Vaughn. And I started getting like tons of hate mail. Like I don't think I've ever gotten more hate mail than I did from that episode. It was so funny to me because it just, like, throughout the entire day, like I was starting to gather more and more of what happened. And then before I knew it, on Twitter, I'm learning that my tweet made it onto like the Fox News Jumbotron, and it anchored 2 segments on Outnumbered and Outnumbered Overtime. And the specific tweet was them using mine to anchor their segment of, liberal cancel culture is coming after Vince Vaughn for sitting down with President Trump. And during that time, I'm thinking to myself, how is this happening right now? Like,
I see your tweets in news articles all the time. I see them in the news. I swear, Siraj, I don't always send them to you because it's like, okay, whatever. Now I'm kind of used to it. I literally see your tweets. I see libs of TikTok in a lot of news articles now. But especially yours, Siraj. And I'm always dying laughing because I know 99.99999% of the time you're joking. So if it's in any serious context, I'm like dying, falling out. But it's okay. Yeah, I could see how that might rile.
But it gets better. It gets better. It gets better.
Okay.
So I'm getting tons of messages from people. I'm getting messages from CNN, Vox, Daily Beast. Look, even Aaron Rupar wrote an article in my defense. And just to give you an idea of how crazy everything has gotten since then. But what I did at the suggestion of another Twitter user was to ensure that Fox News would never use a screenshot of my tweet again that day, specifically for that particular tweet about Vince Vaughn getting canceled. They suggested that I change my name from not at Siraj Hashmi, which is my Twitter handle, but the name, because you could change that anytime and not have to worry about, your Twitter handle change. My actual name, they said you should change to Sharia now. So I did. This is around.
You know what? Actually, I don't want him to be my second interview. Can we cut the feed? Can we cut the feed? The FBI is gonna call my phone. BB, wow, you're punk rock.
It gets better because, for one, just imagine Fox News taking a screen grab of the tweet, posting it on their Jumbotron, and literally my face, and it says Sharia now. The editor-in-chief has a panic attack. He is searching around for me in the office. I go to like, I went into like the video. I like went and edited a video that was in the, that's not where my office, where my cubicle typically is. So he was like hunting around the office, calling everybody who may know, who have my number. And he literally, like, I saw him walk past the office that I was sitting in. And so I get a call from my immediate supervisor saying, hey, just so you know, the boss wants to see you. And I'm like, okay. So I go over to his office and I was like, hey, you want to see me? And he's like, have a seat, close the door. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? And he says, do you realize what you've done? I was like, I played dumb at this time. I'm like, what do you mean? He says, you changed your name to Sharia now. You're making it look like the Washington Examiner is endorsing Sharia law in America. It's like, oh, clearly you're not doing that. And I'm like laughing the entire time. And he's like, you think this is funny? It's like, yes, this is the funniest thing that's ever happened to me. I got the whole media industry flipping out over a sarcastic tweet of mine. And now I got you flipping out over, Sharia now. So basically, he was like, you do this again, you're fired. I was like, all right, cool. Got the message. I'll change my name back. And then he called me in the next morning because he saw tweets that also existed yesterday, from the day before, in which I cursed quite a bit. And he's like, well, it was about the Fox News story in particular. And it was funny because he was like, did you tweet this before or after we had our chat the day before? And I was like, before, like way before. He's like, okay, just making sure, because if you did it after, you'd be gone. It's just, and like, I wasn't lying to him. Like, I did do it before, but it was one of those things where he then started following me on Twitter. And instead of
keep an eye on you.
Yeah, instead of behaving like a good old boy, I still kept getting into fights with people, and that was fun. So, but that is by far one of the funniest, probably one of the funniest emails I've gotten.
Do you think
Or I'm sorry, I would say it was one of the funniest. It was one of the funniest things that's ever happened to me over the course of being a journalist.
Do you think that the corporate press could use to have a little bit more? I think that what they don't understand is like sort of shit posting, trolling, having fun. Now, I wouldn't like Sharia. Changing your name to Sharia now is pretty extreme. Like not extreme, but that's really going full full steam. You're running right into it. But you can still be base and troll a little bit and have fun and remain authentic and joke at yourself. You can, I don't know, maybe be a little bit less sensitive and have fun, but the corporate press doesn't know how to do that.
Yeah. And that's the thing, because
or corporate media in general.
Yeah. So what happened, during that episode, that story I just shared with you, it was one of those things where the boss at the Examiner specifically took issue with my Twitter persona because I was not serious at all. He wanted me to be serious like all the time. And I was like, but that's not how I am. I'm not a robot. I want people to get the impression that, look, I take my work seriously, but I don't take myself seriously. And so that makes it more engaging for people to at least pay attention to what's going on, because if it's just dry, it has no, you have the substance, but you don't have like any personality, then you're not, I hate to say that, journalism today is about entertainment. in many ways, these cable news stations are about entertainment. People watch not for the news. They watch because they like the personalities and they like to get their takes. And so it's very much a personality driven industry now. So I just kind of brought that take over to that approach over to Twitter, where I would not tweet about everything so seriously. In fact, if I started tweeting things seriously, then I would not, well, I wouldn't set myself apart for one, but also I knew I wouldn't be happy doing it. So I just decided to just take the approach I did, because to me, I laugh at like all my own jokes. Almost to the point of like peeing my pants.
Siraj, you're your biggest fan.
It's weird. Well, I don't know. I am also like my biggest enemy too, because I we're all our worst critic. But when I like strike gold, I'm like, oh, when I strike gold, I'm like, oh, Siraj, you done did it. You done did it now.
Really funny. You are really funny on Twitter. I'll be so mad because I'm not funny, really. And I realized in my first podcast, I was like, whoa, I'm really not funny left to my own. I understand humor, but I'm not funny like at all, Siraj. But you on Twitter, and I'm not funny on Twitter either. It's very rare that I even say anything funny on Twitter.
Well,
it's like, it's not my flow.
You need people that you're comfortable around to let that really come out. And even on my solo streams, when I'm doing the list, I am not funny per se. What makes things a little bit more interesting is, for one, I do a Desi accent. I make it clear that when I'm speaking about tweet, I am showing you how it is so stupid. It is so stupid, Liza. I want you to see how dumb these people are. And then I want to smash my head into desk.
What I want to smash my head into desk is when your accent somehow turns into Scottish on a long enough timeline. Your accent turns Scottish.
I still don't get that.
I do, because I'm listening and you're the one that's talking, thinking that you're on point, but I'm actually listening. Go back and watch your Timcast interview and you'll see the shift, Siraj. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. So you do list streams on Twitch. You do your podcast with Jay called Habibi Bros. On Rumble called Habibi Bros. And is Habibi Power once a week, right? And then there's Habibi Bros. I'm always confused about that, even though I've been on the show.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Jay and I form a collective called the Habibi Bros.
Okay.
Our show itself is titled Habibi Power Hour. So when I tell people what we're part of, it's always difficult because they're like, it's Habibi Power Hour, but we're the Habibi Bros. So it's like, you could say the Habibi Bros podcast, but the name of the show is Habibi Power Hour, but leaves Jay and my names out, or there's like no specific reference to it. Anyways, we do Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. East on Rumble. We simulcast the other platforms as well. But when it comes to, say, talking to guests, we typically pre-record that behind a paywall, and then we started releasing sort of a more public version of it on Rumble. And it's been going well. We got we have a lot of fun. We talk to different guests across the political spectrum, and the idea is not to be combative with anyone. I honestly want to get people's takes on what they think about the world and how they simply view what is happening right now.
You know what drives me crazy is when folks are having a guest on their podcast and they're like, oh, you're going to ask them about this. Oh, you're going to ask them about this. It's like, no, I'm trying to have a civil conversation, an in-depth civil conversation so we can actually talk, rather than the person being like, oh, F you, I don't have time for this, click, and hanging up. The whole point is to have on somebody and have a civil conversation and to dig a little bit deeper and maybe find ways that you agree and maybe ways that you disagree. So it always is so weird to me that people always think there's going to be some like Duke drag out fight, unless it's booked as a debate. Why would you be disrespectful or rude to your guest?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's important though, if you say are speaking with a public official, that you offer more pushback on the things they voted on, the things they've said, the things they've advocated for, because ultimately, if you don't do it and you have the opportunity to, then I think it doesn't help the conversation because it doesn't offer clarity on, say, some of the questionable things that politician did.
What elected official would ever go within 10 miles of Habibi Bros? Besides Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Oh, she wouldn't even say yes to us. That's a good question.
BB, there's no elected official that's coming on your program.
I'm just trying to think of who would realistically actually go on our program.
Just for anyone listening, so I call Siraj. Siraj calls the folks that listen to, well, he calls everyone Habibi or Habibit, or Habibi.
There's Habibi. That's usually what you say to. You can say that to anyone. Habibti is specifically for women.
Habibti. But I just like Habibi a little bit more because the other one's too hard for me to say. And then I called him Habibi, and then I switched it to BBBBIBI, and then sometimes it's Beebs, like Justin Bieber. So your nickname.
I am a believer.
Well, your haircut looks nice, Siraj. So you're coming for his you're coming for his whole energy. But yeah, so for anybody, but all you call the individuals, I love the Habibis. The Habibis are kind of like, I don't know, I don't really want to say fans. It's almost like your extended family of folks that listen to your podcast, follow your work, follow the list. But they're awesome people. It's a truly, I know this is so overused, but I want to say diverse group of people, but it truly is a diverse group of people that follow Habibis and Habibi Bros. Usually people that have a pretty good sense of humor, want to laugh a lot, and can take a joke, aren't easily offended, both men and women. And it's a really cool group of people. I think that's a testament to you, Siraj, is that you, I don't want to say fans because fans is such a weird, what do you call the Habibis?
A community.
Okay. A community. Yeah. I wasn't really sure because I guess I would consider myself a Habibi, but I'm definitely not your fan.
No. Well, I would say, and I make this joke quite
I'm
a
your
bit
equal or better.
I was just going to say that basically the Habibis are family.
Okay. The Habibis are family.
And then I just break out a bunch of Vince Diesel Fast and Furious memes, and then they all want to kill me.
Probably. Probably. So one thing I do want to talk about before we go, and definitely please check out his podcast and his show and his streams. Check out the list on Twitter. I highly recommend it. Probably for anyone that's listening to this podcast is for purposes, probably I would suggest 18 or above. Maybe not for Twitter. I don't know. What would you say? For Habibi Bros, definitely 18 and over.
Yeah, for sure.
Like it's not for children or not. For, no. Okay.
And then let's just put it this way. I have gotten reprimanded by my parents multiple times for my language. And I have specifically told them, do not watch my content because you will disown me. And I don't want that to happen.
Right.
So it's funny because my reputation within my family, I have 3 siblings. So it's a family of 6. So I'm the most thoughtful member of the family. But I curse like a sailor. So it's one of those things where I was really thoughtful. I was very reliable. And then I just say shit and fuck a lot. So I'm sorry. I don't know if that's getting censored.
You are reliable after 2 p.m.
That's true. That is true. I don't know. I think
2 p.m. you are not reliable. And the other thing I've learned from being your friend is I cannot ask you anything, any favors, no anything. Literally my entire life could fall apart. If it's on Saturday or Sunday, you're MIA or like gone or like barely checking in to your other life.
That is true because we all need a breather.
From
We
me.
do.
You're
No,
like,
not from you. But from Twitter. It's slow on the weekends, not a lot of people are on there, and ultimately if you view Twitter like a job like I do sometimes, it's nice to take a break and just unplug. So I try to do it on the weekends. I'm not always successful. Usually when there's special events or something like that, I'll hop on there, see what's happening.
you do, and you come on and talk about sports and stuff. I try not to bother you on the weekends, but there have been times where I really like wanted him to be my friend on the weekend, and I can't get a hold of you. And I'm like, then by the time you get back on Monday or like get into the flow on Monday, Tuesday, I'm like, oh, never mind, that's old news. Like I'm fully
Yeah.
over. Like, oh, never mind, it's old news. But one thing I really did want to talk to you about, just sort of the last thing before we wind up, is you grew up a portion of your life in Pakistan.
hmm
You were born here in the United States and you lived, I think you were pretty young, right? When you moved to Pakistan.
I moved to Pakistan when I was 7 years old, and I lived there until I was 14. And I was there on and off, traveling back to the United States, and my folks always held on to the family home in Connecticut throughout that time. And so usually during the summers and like winter breaks, we come back to the States and see family, reconnect with friends, go to camp. I went to a day camp. Not
Very
a
popular.
not training camp in Syria, like an actual camp. And yeah, it was good. It was an interesting balance because I got to see two different parts of the world and learn a lot from the part where my dad grew up, and see what he saw and the reason why he wanted to go back. So the reason why we ended up living in Pakistan was because he and a group of other physicians, he's a heart surgeon, they wanted to fund the building of several hospitals in Pakistan, specifically in the city of Lahore, where he's from. He's from a village up by the Himalayas called Sialkot or Saiwal. It's like two different names. I don't know. I still don't understand how that works, but that's a conversation for my dad. In any event,
Can I interview
we
him?
live. Yeah, you should interview. Oh, my dad's he is very interesting. He is one of the best people I know, and a lot of the things that I do, uh, he's usually the inspiration behind it, and so he basically set up a practice in Pakistan for about 8 years. He brought in his own personnel, his own tools, and basically tried to flip around healthcare in Pakistan where, people couldn't afford surgery. They could, the heart surgery is like one of the most complicated, life impacting surgeries you can have. I mean, people have died on the table when he's been there operating. So, I mean, not through any fault of his own. I mean, there's some people are just really, really sick.
Yeah.
And, when he was there, he did so many pro bono cases. And it was one of those things where he wasn't in it to make money. He was just in it to give back. And so I always think about that time and how when I was there and how I like complained a lot about how like things just weren't the same going through the culture shock. I realized what my dad sacrificed in order to bring us there and what he wanted to do. And honestly, I wouldn't be the same person that I am today if I had never lived there. I wouldn't have the appreciation for the things I have now. I certainly wouldn't have the same outlook on the world that I do now if I hadn't lived there. And ultimately, I probably wouldn't have I wouldn't have a close relationship with my father if it weren't for that. That is the place where we took up golf, and he and I used to golf like every weekend whenever he didn't have a case or an operation. And it was just me and him out there. It was like that one bonding activity that he and I had. And it wasn't until later that my older brother started getting involved and playing golf. And that was like when he already was a father to 2 kids and married, and, right, like a couple of years before the pandemic began. So, and I feel bad for my brother because like, those are all those opportunities that he missed and like bonding with me and my dad. And yeah, I'm very reflective on that. And I realized that, like, I think about my own mortality. I think about the mortality of my family a lot. And it makes it really difficult to see how things are going now and how people are being so kind of broken up by things that are so trivial, like politics. And that's probably been the most frustrating aspect about all of
I
this
think you
is
should
that,
I think if you're comfortable with it, I think you should dig in a little bit deeper there because you're dancing around, and I think there's something pretty deep there.
yeah, I mean, like I've gone this one way and, in my own ideology, and I've sort of been very skeptical and not trustworthy about how, our government works or how the establishment works. And it's like night and day with my family. My siblings and my parents, they're all very liberal. And I have come to blows with them on multiple things. And while I
Literal
don't mind
blows?
having,
Literal blows or verbal?
no,
Okay.
verbal, it hasn't been great. It has not been great because I don't like having confrontations with people. Despite my persona on Twitter, I don't like having confrontations with people. And that's what's always been the funniest thing about what I do is that I hate having confrontations with people, yet all I do is getting confrontations with people.
You kind of just
But
point out stuff and then walk away. It's not like you're trying to have a back and forth. You just point out that it's a weird tweet, but you don't even you usually just put a meme like there. It's not even like you say, because sometimes when people say stuff at Twitter, like I get what you're saying, but I mean, it's not, I've seen stuff, I'm not even going to say it because this podcast is going up in YouTube. It's like I'll see stuff like really calling people all types of names, even to me, like all types of names in the book. F you, I hope you, all this type of stuff. You don't do all that. You just put like a meme of them being, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like you super go in. You might break it down on Twitch when you break down why
mhm.
it's not a good tweet, but you don't go super in and you're not very mean to people or call for anything funky. I think with your family,
Yeah, I mean,
it affects you more deeply because you love them so much. And, I think some of your views have shifted or changed over the past few years as a result of the pandemic, as a result of the corporate press, as a result of government malfeasance, and you and your family aren't necessarily always meeting eye to eye.
right. And I was a lot more liberal in my teenage years because that was post 9/11. Like, the reason why we left Pakistan was because Al Qaeda and the Taliban put a bounty on all American heads in Afghanistan and Pakistan. So within 10 days after 9/11, my family evacuated Pakistan and we settled back in Connecticut where I finished high school. And that's when I started to notice a lot more about politics in our government and how it worked. And what really sort of drew me into politics was the 2003 invasion of Iraq. And I was staunchly opposed to that war. I still am. In fact, probably if you were the one thing that sort of brought me into the Democratic Party was that they're anti-war. And I thought war was awful. I thought it didn't serve any purpose. I thought it was sort of very primal. It was a primal impulse of human beings to wage physical aggression onto other people to get their way, and not through, more diplomacy, persuasion, and nonviolent means. So that's what initially drew me to politics in the Democratic Party. As time went on, I realized that, that was just a facade, and that was specifically designed to grab power. And, I came to the realization, I took a few steps back and I understood that basically everything that's sort of said in politics or by any politician, never really aimed to serve, a noble cause. Sometimes it does, but ultimately it's designed to grab power. And so once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. And even if you look at it through that lens, it's not a partisan critique. It is very much a nonpartisan, because you can literally say that about any politician and it would be true. And it doesn't matter if they're Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, libertarian, anywhere on the spectrum, it would mostly be true. And when I tried to make these critiques about people that say my family is really, they really admire and adore, that they would, it became a situation where, I had to stop calling my mom, because every single time I get on the phone with her, she'd talk about how much she hated Trump. And I was just like, I don't even know what to do with this anymore. Right? Like, and of course, things got really funny when my wife and I got married at the Trump Hotel in 2019, at the height of his presidency. And it's really funny because I don't tell the story much, and I don't think I've told it at all, really. Well, for one, my siblings tried to convince me to not have it there. We already had another venue booked, but it was, it was going to be in November. It was mostly outdoors, and it's just going to be, you can't predict the weather. So we had limited options by that time. It was like maybe 3 weeks before we actually were going to get married. So we looked at a couple of venues. We're like, all right, well, maybe we could do. We had a few choices, and then ultimately decided on the Trump Hotel. And my dad, like the weekend of the wedding, going into the rehearsal portion of the wedding weekend, my dad walks in. I don't know if you've ever been to the Trump Hotel in DC. It's in the the old post office building, beautiful building. My dad walks in, he looks up, it's a giant atrium. Says to himself, "Son of a bitch has the nicest building in DC." I die when I heard that. But like, it was one of those things where, like, people knew I wasn't like a Trump guy. Like, I wasn't MAGA. Like, I could separate the hotel from the person, from the president. And there were a lot of people who attended our wedding, and they did it begrudgingly. And I think there are a lot of people who decided, they wanted. I don't think they wanted to admit they had a good time. I think some people did admit they had a good time. I don't think they wanted to have a good time.
Isn't
But
it weird
in
that
any
things
event,
are that intense? Like that's so, and I think that's one thing that you and I really have in common, Siraj. We don't take the whole thing too seriously. Like we can just vibe, chill, and like not have a full mental breakdown if we're invited on what seemingly would be shaky territory politically. It's just like you and I just don't care. We think the whole thing is ridiculous. We think
yeah.
everybody on both sides can be a little ridiculous. And I think you and I are also very put off by people that are hyper, like super focused, like the super intense people on both sides. We're both like, that's a bit much for me, but we can still hang
Yeah.
out, be friends, kick it. We'll just be off of that specific subject. We won't talk about that subject. I think, but like, so for somebody to not even want to go to a wedding that they were invited to a beautiful hotel, because regardless of whatever you think about Trump, I really don't think about him that often, but if no matter what you think about him, those hotels are really pretty. They are really pretty.
Yeah, they are. And ultimately it wasn't my choice. I mean, my in-laws and my wife and their in-laws, they're big Trump supporters. I am the groom. I am not gonna I will say, I'm cool with it. Like, it's fine. It's not a big deal. It wasn't really up to me to choose the venue. I'm again the groom. Like, it's just like, what are you gonna do? So, when I got pushback from like my mom and my siblings, like my dad laughed, he thought it was so funny. Um, but like he immediately was like, all right, it's there. And that's what's happening. And when my family tried to push back on it, there's always like in Pakistani weddings, there are usually three different events. One's called a Mendi. Mendi is like the dance party. It's like, you do your Bollywood dances and stuff like that. You dress up in bright, beautiful colors. And, it's just kind of like a fun, supposed to be, it's a formal, but somewhat a relaxed gathering where the families kind of meet and get to know each other a little bit. And then the second day is usually the nikah ceremony. That's where the actual wedding of the union of the bride and groom take place. And then comes the walima. And the walima is specifically a dinner or a party thrown by the groom side of the family for the bride side, because it's usually assumed that the bride side is paying for the mendi and the wedding. So it's sort of like you have this equal exchange, even though it's like 2 nights versus 1. But in any event, we're supposed to do a walima in June 2020. Obviously, that never happened because of COVID. But in the lead up to that, I was telling my folks, I was like, look, if you want to have the walima at Nancy Pelosi's home, I'm not going to say no. I feel like there should always be balance.
At least there would be ice cream in the freezer at all times.
I can't say no to that. I can't say no to
that. Remember that video she did like during COVID where it was like, so like, sis, read the room. This is not the time or place for this video where you're showcasing and meanwhile, people were like, couldn't go to work. Like that was when the money situation, the economic devastation of people not really being able to work. I can't remember fully if that was before or after the checks had come, but I know a lot of people out here were really struggling. And it was just like, what PR person let you do that? I know it's really difficult going through the differences with your family. I wish that everyone could just get along about different things. And there have been times throughout the last few years, my family, has moved closer to me, to my point of view on things. And I'm really grateful for that because it was kind of a little bit contentious there for a while. And, it makes things really hard. It makes you not want to go over and, hang out and eat a bowl of chili and watch football. You know what I mean? Like you don't have that same vibe. You like think twice. You're like, oh, do I have to sit and talk about, virus, a vaccine, a political situation? It is really tense. And it's kind of, it seems sort of incidental because we don't know what tomorrow brings. And I would certainly hate for individuals that I care so much about, for our last conversation to be contentious over something. I'm not going to act like it's not trivial. I'm not going to act like politics is a big deal. I know for a lot of people, it's a big deal. And I know the vaccine's a big deal for a lot of people. I know COVID's a big deal for a lot of people. But in the scheme of my entire life, I would certainly hate for my last conversation with a loved one, friend or family member, to be a contentious argument about something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it gets even more contentious when the thing that my immediate family hates the most is the fact that, well, I don't know if they would ever admit this, but the fact that my wife worked for the Trump admin and worked on the election integrity fight after the 2020 election. And she's been demonized. I've become radioactive as a result. People have basically, stopped responding to my messages. It's just, I realize that like this type of situation, you learn who your true friends are. It just becomes even more frustrating when your family gets wrapped up in it. And like I said, before. You know, I don't get the benefit of the doubt like I used to, because everything is looked at through the prism of politics.
Which is interesting
And
that they don't fully relate, because it sounds like their love story had almost the exact same theme. It was
mhm,
just a difference between religious beliefs and, um,
political.
yeah, political, religious, well, family. I'm speaking extended family, not with your parents specifically, but I'm assuming that they weren't cool with going from Catholicism to,
Islam
yeah,
initially, yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's kind of a, especially when you think in that time frame that that interracial relationships at that time were not as accepted as they are now. And we're still
Right.
working through that as a society. So it was really, would have been really a shock then. So I'm surprised that they don't recognize that more with the
Which
situation
is,
with you.
it's interesting because like my grandparents on my mom's side who are still alive, they absolutely love Emily. They love my wife, and they're big liberals. I mean, I don't know if they've been sheltered from all the stuff that's been said about her, but they they specifically like really enjoy being around me and Emily. And look, I just think right now I'm just misunderstood. I think my wife and I are both misunderstood by a lot of people. And that's okay. Like I understand that it's going to take time for people to kind of see things the way that I see them. You know, it's just not it's just not a fun experience to try to get people you really care about to, you know, you could bring someone to what is that saying? You can bring a camel to water, but you can't make it drink. It's like
I was going to say
you know,
horse, but of course of course you would turn it into camel.
I did do that, didn't I?
BB, camels hold water for a long time. Horse, I mean, yes, you could have
But
that.
they drink just like
They do drink.
horses.
They do drink, but I'm a farm girl and you're Pakistani, so you took it to camel and I took it to horse.
It's funny because there aren't really that many camels in Pakistan.
Damn,
There just aren't.
damn. When you realize your friend's racist. Hey, what's
Whoa,
up? Hey, Siraj, what do you think about what's going on with Joe Rogan? Honestly, like, you
honestly,
give me an honest opinion, but honest, no, I mean, I'm serious though. Like, what do you? Don't give me the diplomatic answer. I want to know what you really think.
I think it's an orchestrated attack on him. I think it's specifically designed to get people to make him radioactive, not listen to his show, because he is very influential. Even if he is not himself coming up with, you know, the talking points or the what to think, his guests, his network, the people he has on, the experts, the comedians, the journalists, you name it, they have a pretty immense platform to say what's that's on their mind, whatever questions Joe asks them. And sometimes he doesn't offer, sometimes he offers pushback, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he asks for clarity, sometimes he doesn't. But the fact that he's not a journalist and he has that big of a platform, I think that is what scares a lot of people, because there are people who do take his word as gospel, but there are a lot of people who are like, I'm not sure if that's true, but you know, I like Joe and I'll keep listening to him. So I think there are a lot more rational people out there who understand what's going on.
When you
And
say
look,
coordinated attack, whom do you believe is coordinating it, and why is it Saudi Arabia?
uh I don't think the Saudis are behind it. I
You're
do think
tripping.
that,
You're tripping. You need to go down that rabbit hole. You're tripping.
why do you think the Saudis are behind it?
It's a long story that we'll talk about off camera. No,
Okay, all right.
no. I think it just has to do with Spotify. Trying to appease. You know how I am. I'm a little like off the rails, so that's one of the theories out there.
Well, I, I have to look into it. I've never actually heard that particular theory.
Well, this is why this podcast will come out probably in a week or so. So this will be old news. Who knows what we'll be talking about, by then.
Unless it
But
enters week 3 of Joe
I'm
Rogan.
so over it. I'm so fully over it. I could literally, can we talk about anyone else? Like, I hope Elon goes on a tweet storm so that he just draws the attention away. Like, I hope he says something totally like off
Off
the
the wall.
rails. Yeah, he's the only one that could pull it away right now. We need him to come out and just be fully wild for a couple days and just pull the attention. I also too find it very perplexed when everyone wants to talk about the same thing at one time. When everyone's talking about Joe Rogan, I look around and I say, okay, what else is going on? Because they're trying to slip something else through. Or there's
Yeah,
something else going on.
absolutely.
So that's one thing
Absolutely.
that I do. I might talk, tweet out about Joe Rogan, but secretly I'm looking off for the other things moving sort of that aren't being talked about. But with Saudi Arabia, what they were talking about was because they took down about 100 episodes.
Mhm.
And Michael Malice was in those episodes, like some of those episodes, and it was his early episodes pre-COVID. And so that sort of led me down this rabbit hole, like, okay, what was said on the episodes that they took down? Obviously, they were looking for keywords. I don't know whether or not they did it with an algorithm or if they did it by hand. But one of the podcasters one of the guests that had been taken down had said that they although they had not said anything derogatory about different races or used any racial slurs or anything like that, that they had spoken negatively about Saudi Arabia, and that Spotify has just solidified a bigger deal with Saudi Arabia. In some, I was trying to look into it. I guess they're already in Saudi Arabia. I don't know.
They
But
got money.
yeah, they do have a lot of money. They do have a lot of money. I don't know, Siraj. It's just so, the thing is, when I look at something like that, so first thing that pops in my mind is they could technically take down Rogan. Spotify could
Mhm.
agree to take down Rogan, and I guess other platforms could just magically not let him on. Like, yeah, right. So he was never banned off of YouTube. So let's say like they do a full Alex Jones like treatment on Joe Rogan. Like this is a whole
Mhm.
full thing. They do full Alex Jones on him. They still couldn't stop all of the other podcasters that have come up. Like you're not going to be able to get everyone. You get what I'm
No.
saying? Like there would be another Joe Rogan. Maybe not just like that, but there will be someone that takes that spot of the most listened to podcast, and there will still be an entire generation of podcasters that they aren't going to be able to stifle everyone unless they literally unplug the internet, you know?
Yeah, 100 years ago, the government fought a war against people drinking alcohol
Hmm.
and bootleggers, and it's different players, but ultimately the game is still the same. And I don't think it's the government specifically that's trying to ban podcasts or people thinking independently.
You're tripping.
But I do.
You're tripping.
No. Let me get to my point. I don't think they're doing it overtly. I
Is
think
that okay?
they are going through more covert means to try to get that done, because ultimately
Covert
the
means
government
is not what
does.
press secretary. The press secretary Jen Psaki said we need to. We wish that they would do more. I'm paraphrasing in a press briefing for the White House about Joe Rogan on Spotify.
Yeah,
Siraj, no.
that is okay. We have not met the threshold in which we need to raise a 5 alarm. It's not 5 alarm blaze just yet.
He's a
It
private
is.
citizen, Siraj. He's a
He
private
is.
citizen.
He's a private citizen. Once he gets arrested for his actual comments, then that's when we sound the alarm, because
Don't you believe
the
being in person is almost worse than being arrested?
do I think that what
When someone is unpersoned, like
on person?
you can't take an Uber, you can't order food, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't fly. Don't you almost think in a way that's worse
That's
than being
black. Yeah, that's
arrested?
being blacklisted, and that's the marquee of a fascist state. That is when the government works specifically with the private sector to achieve a certain means that detriments the people. And I think we're definitely heading there. If we're not careful, we will. And I think Rogan is too powerful at the moment for that to happen, because if he goes down, then it, the culture war is not meant to be one that's just meant to continue on and on.
Hmm.
And when it comes to Rogan, I think he is the big fish in all of this. Maybe the attacks on him are designed to set a precedent to go after basically anyone he's inspired. And maybe people will speak up for Rogan, but maybe they may not speak up for you. They may not speak up for me.
They would not speak up for you. They would definitely speak up for me. Literally, no one would speak up for you. They would run around singing Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead. And everyone would stand up for me. The outcry would be days and days, gnashing their teeth, ripping their clothes. No, Eliza Bleu podcast is gone.
Amazing what impact you can have with just one episode, right, Eliza?
Technically, Beebs, this is my third. You are my third. You're my diversity and inclusion podcast. I had to you're my diversity and inclusion.
Gay, incel, lib, fuzzlum.
Correct. No, I mean, actually, you're just my friend, but and I wanted something a little more lighthearted because my first podcast was intense. My second podcast,
it was intense. It was a great episode, but it was intense.
You think so, Beeves?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough to talk about yourself. I mean, there were times during this episode where I was like, man, I usually ever talk about this stuff publicly.
Really? I guess it's weird because we're friends. I hear you talk about stuff more.
Yeah, but I mean, like, that's the thing. It's like we're, for people who have like a public persona, there are things that you really want to, you work really hard to keep private. And when it comes to like things like that's been happening to me over the last year, like people really want me to turn into George Conway and just turn on my wife. That ain't happening. So
because of politics.
Yeah.
Because of who she has decided to work for in the past.
Yeah. She is a free woman.
She is a free woman now. I wasn't going to sell it out. I wasn't going to sell it out, but she is a free woman.
Yeah. She's a free woman now. So she said she left me, right?
You know what's so weird? So, well, that's a matter of time. That's a matter of time. She's, it's weird, Siraj, because I focus on such heavy stuff all day. Child sexual abuse material, human trafficking, domestic violence and sexual assault. And when I think in the context of like people being really horrible or doing really horrible things, or like a reason why you would leave a significant other or a spouse, I think of like, oh, it better be pretty bad. Choosing to work for a specific administration, which by the way, looks great on any resume, regardless of the administration, because you made it up that far in the, I think that's, I think that says a lot about someone's work.
I'm very proud. I'm very proud of her, by the way. And I want everyone to know that, because she has been there for me for the last, I've actually tried to count down to the year that we will have known each other longer than we haven't known each other. And that's when we'll be both 38. So it's coming up on us. And so I specifically, look, she and I have not always agreed on stuff, even politically, but we love each other deeply, and I am very loyal to her, and I would never do anything to hurt her. And I think politics is just so beneath us that we don't need to alienate the people we love because we just have different opinions. That is the marquee of a society that just doesn't know how to function.
But I think that a lot of people relate to that, Siraj. Like, even though I'm not personally going through that right now with my family, I think so many people, basically since, let's just say 2016 era, have lost friends, families, loved ones, lovers, to this political divide that's happening in the country. And now, to make matters worse, you put COVID-19 in there. And then, to make matters worse, you put the vaccine in there. And what I mean is, not to make matters worse, you put the vaccine in there. What I mean is the debate and the divide.
Mhm.
It's almost like folks are either on one side or the other side, and they're almost have cult-like thinking where it's like it's at the point where people feel like they couldn't even share a meal with someone that they're related to if they didn't believe the exact same thing as them. Or
Yeah,
that you should turn your back on your wife. Like, this is like ludicrous to me. I cannot think, my brain doesn't work like this.
right.
Um, but I think you would be surprised, Siraj, at how many people in the United States and around the world are dealing with that very
Oh, I'm
specific
sure
thing.
tons.
A
I'm sure
lot.
tons. But like that's the thing is like you look back on that, and it's happened to even my mom. Like she and one of her friends, they had a pretty big falling out over politics, even back in 2000,
Mm.
over Bush v. Gore. And my mom was in 2000. My mom was a big Bush fan before she went fully lib, and her one of her closest friends. I grew up with her family, and one of her son is like one of my closest friends, my oldest friends. I've known them since I was like 4 years old, and they had a big falling out. They were like best of friends, and then they had this falling out over politics. And I look back on that. Luckily, they made up for it. Whatever beef they had, they squashed it, and they remained friends to the very end. Unfortunately, my mom's friend, she passed away last year after a battle with cancer, and I went and attended her funeral, and like her she had four daughters and one son, and the one son is one of my closest friends to this day. But he again doesn't he was very much in the same camp as me. Like just wasn't he just wasn't liberal, and his entire all of his siblings were, and his mother was. They're like very staunch Democrats. And then I just asked them, and I don't even know if I got the right answer, but it was like kind of like in a few months after her death, I just asked him, I was like, how did you deal with your mother on this stuff? Because I think about the time that our moms specifically had a falling out, and then they came back, and they were able to be friends again. It just I don't know if something big has to happen.
Mm.
Unfortunately, like it's always like you're always beefing with people, but until something like really tragic happens, you like all like forget about all of that and then come together. And it's sad to think that. Like I don't want something bad to happen in order for me to, you know, reconnect with my family. And like I know like my both my maternal grandparents are both past they're both in their 90s, and I feel like it's going to be that. And it's just death is just a part of life, and it's something that comes for us all. We can't escape it. I think again, I think about my mortality a lot. I think about um literally everyone in my family, my loved ones, my friends. I think about everybody dying at some point in time. Um
That's
Fairly
because it
often.
happens to every human.
Right. But like maybe more than what is healthy.
Hmm.
I'm just trying to mentally prepare myself, I guess, for the worst.
Hmm.
And um it's always never how you imagine it.
Hmm.
And like I would imagine like how I feel if my mom died. I'd imagine how I feel if my dad died, or if my brother or my two sisters they died. There's nothing that can mentally prepare you for any of that. What's sad though is that I feel like something like that has to happen in order for me to even get on good terms with anyone in my family. And that's probably what haunts me the most. So
That's pretty intense, Suresh. And I know it's not easy to talk about. but I'm really appreciative that you are talking about it, because I know that there are folks out there that will listen to this that are going through something similar and will relate. And sometimes
Yeah.
just knowing that other people are going through the same thing um, lets folks know that they're not alone and
Yeah,
help.
I want people to know that they're not alone. Just because I shit post on Twitter all day doesn't mean I still feel the same things that they feel, or probably go through the same things they go through. I'm a human just like them. And I think probably what's the most wild part about this is that, it's kind of like a real pivot here. Like, I'll get tons of DMs from people on Twitter, and I'll respond to a lot of them. Every now and then I'll get a response from someone saying like, "Oh wow, you responded. I never thought you would ever see this." Like, yeah, why wouldn't I? I check my messages. I check my messages just like everyone else. I want to see. I want to see what people are sending me. Like I am. I do not see myself as above everybody else, but I guess there's that perception that like just because like I have,
You are not
you
above
know,
me, Siraj Hashmi, and don't let that
I
perspective
know.
fool you. And I'm quickly catching up. I am quickly catching up.
You are catching up. You're catching up.
And
I'm slowing down.
there was even a time that I was probably going to steal your show from you
Hmm.
as your co-host, like not even as your co-host. I mean, just kick
Yeah,
you
just
off
replace
your
me.
show. And then Jay
Hey,
and I
Eliza,
would.
anything is possible, really.
It is, Siraj, but I wouldn't lower myself in my personal brand by even affiliating myself full time with Habibi Bros or Habibi Power Hour.
Too late for that, Eliza.
You're a little late for that. No, I think so yeah, you're saying, yeah, I'm approachable, I'm reachable, I'm, regular person, but how do you deal, just going back a little bit, how do you deal with the emotions of things that you're going through now? You have your wife is extremely supportive and vice versa. You
Yeah,
have your dog.
I do have Ernie.
Yeah, I wish Ern was in this podcast, but obviously he's not. What else
Do you,
helps you get through, Suraj?
I do go to the gym. I do lift weights. I like to make music, as your podcast intro probably already exhibited. I do game quite a bit, but ultimately, I think what really sort of relieves stress is doing what I do for Habibi Bros and the list. It's sort of like an escape for me. It's a retreat into my work. And while some people will be like, "Oh, that's not really a job," yeah, maybe it's not, but it's a fun thing I do, and it serves a purpose I that people didn't really know that they needed. So
Hmm.
I enjoy doing that, and you know, take I take great pride in spending time with my wife and dog. And if whenever I get the chance to golf, I'll try to golf. So
Pretty cool, Suraj. Where do you see yourself going in 5 to 10 years? Like, would you like to, because sometimes, especially when I'm on Habibi Power Hour, I almost think that the Habibi Bros has sort of if SNL was kind of cool. Like I could almost see, like, if you had a budget, Suraj, I actually think it could be funny. Like, it's already funny, but you get what I'm
mhm.
saying? Like, you guys actually have kind of a when
I have a
SNL
thing
was
going.
funny energy.
The way I look at it is, Deezus and Miro,
No.
the Bodega Boys. They have a show on Showtime now, and they started off as a podcast where they would kind of just shoot the shit and talk politics and culture and whatnot. And they bring on guests sometimes and interview them. For for Jay and I, it's kind of like a version of that, but a little bit more Arab, a little bit Middle Eastern, a little bit more Muslim. We always try to add
A
like
little.
a very, almost exclusively,
Extremely.
which extremely, we basically, it's like if ISIS decided that they wanted to have their own SNL. That's basically how you put it. No, but yeah, I mean, so let me give you an example. So for I remember Jay and I were discussing about doing one of these cold opens. This is like in the early days of us doing cold opens. And if you've never seen our show, our cold opens are just off the wall crazy. We specifically focus our cold opens around something topical. It's usually like a news interview. Like we can't get to, we don't, again, we don't have a budget. We are literally doing this on StreamYard.
BB, I
And
did one with you. I did a cold open with you.
You did a cold open with us. You were the only guest, I think, to ever do that with us.
Because it was my idea and we could wear costumes.
It was your idea. Yes. And you have plenty of costumes.
I do.
So we did this, the Oprah Winfrey interview with Prince Harry and Meghan.
Yeah.
We're like, all right, how do we parody this? Well, for one, you have to obviously understand the time that we live in. Literally anything that can be construed as bigoted or racist, we wanted to steer clear of. So I knew. So like Jay made the suggestion, like, who's going to play Meghan? I was like, we can't do that. Someone's going to say we're doing blackface. We can't do that. And I was like, but what we could do, and this is like a very, very like tiny bit of information that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but I picked up on because I thought it was somewhat odd. And that is Harry and Meghan had a secret ceremony getting married before the actual public ceremony. So I thought to myself, well, what if Prince Harry had a secret ceremony with another wife? I mean, like, it's certainly possible that he could be married to another woman. So I was like, what if he
Siraj?
like had a secret ceremony with like a Saudi princess? And so he literally centered a what we call, because our parody outlet is called ASS News. And we specifically designed an interview with the actual member of that bride, that Saudi princess bride, to sit down with ASS News to tell her side of the story about her like divulging like the fact that Prince Harry had married her in secret and never told anyone about it, and that she was like coming to basically claim her man. And then Jay comes in looking like Ron Howard in Happy Days, just like the full red hair, but he's got the beard, and he just comes in, he's like, hello babies. And I lost my shit. I like, that was the only time I ever broke character. I just like couldn't stop laughing, and I literally had to turn around away from the camera to get my composure. It was.
But did you know what his costume looked like prior to him coming on? Okay.
No, that's the thing. That's the thing. And we specifically try to do this without breaking character. I have done a very good job of not breaking character.
You're horrible at it, and you always break character. But okay.
Because I don't have any character.
No, it's just that Jay. No, the truth is that Jay is so funny that.
Yeah, I have to always be the serious one.
Well, no, it's just that he's just funny. He's like a funny person. So yeah. and he thinks so on his toes, and he's just really I don't know how to explain it. He's just very, very funny. So it's hard to keep a straight face. It's kind of like, I would love to keep a straight face around you, but it's really hard. I was having difficulty reading your bio because I'm thinking about you and your insanity. But oh,
Jay is way funnier than I ever will be. He's just the dude's hilarious.
But you guys still do a good job. You guys still do a good job, and I think you could move into more of that different. So is that where you see Habibi Bros going?
My God, I hope. I haven't really thought about it that much. I just think about the week to week and the day to day.
How old are you?
I'm 34.
You're 34 years old, married man, and you don't think about your future.
I do think about my future a lot. I just don't think about my career. I don't think about my career. I think about like my personal future.
And that's okay, Siraj. That's okay. Aw.
I mean, the thing is, like, I just like think so much has been happening in the last like couple of years that like I just haven't had time to really think about the future. I'm just trying to get through the present.
But sometimes those are the best. I mean, if you listen to Joe Rogan, for instance, it's not like he set out to really do anything. He was just doing it. That's actually
Yeah.
kind of, I mean, my story a little bit is similar as well. It's not like I set out to be a podcaster or to be on podcast interviews. I just want to start tweeting about human trafficking during a pandemic, So
Yeah,
I think that those
that's the thing.
unintentional things happen almost a little bit the best. People that plan things out almost, it doesn't go because they're so stressed about it being, what in their mind, what they want to do. So maybe it's better if you just kind of leave it and your music is doing
Yeah.
well.
I just like doing things just because I like to do them. I think we as a society, we're very much embroiled in this love of material things, materialism. You got to have the nice house, the fancy car, you name it, all these trophies. And I think about this, this came off of a rap album I listened to back in like 2012. And it's like, if you shouldn't want to do something just to get, those trophies. You should just do things just to do it because you love doing it. And that's kind of, I took that to heart, and I just do things that I love to do. And I don't like being around people that I don't like being around. So because I know time is valuable, it's short, and we owe it to ourselves to not let anybody waste our time or be entitled to our time. And we should focus on the things that we really do truly care about.
That's a pretty awesome way to live, Siraj. And it means a lot because I think you have really been there for me as a friend when I needed it. I know we joke around a lot, but you have been an awesome friend and someone that I look up to, and I know I could really go to if I had something that I was going through there that was really intense. And I really value our friendship. I really appreciate our friendship.
And I value ours as well. And you've been there for me as well, even when I've gone through.
I've been there for you more.
Some... It's not a competition, Eliza. I know it's the Winter Olympics right now.
I keep a ledger.
Is this the new Olympic event? I think it is.
BB. But before we go, I just want you to go ahead and tell people exactly where they can find you. Say it slowly.
Sure.
All you content creators, rattle through your stuff. You got to say it slowly so it gets in people's head.
Yeah. Where you can find me mainly is on Twitter.
Slowly, Beeves.
At
I'm done with you.
Siraj A
He froze.
Me.
I'm done with you, Bees. Did he really freeze? Did he freeze or did he freeze on the screen? Did he really freeze?
I don't know. Can you see me? Did I freeze?
You froze. Bibi, you were already going slow. And then we're leaving that in. Okay.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, it was. Okay. So why don't you say your name again? Say your name again. Say your name again, because I hate my podcast. Okay. Please say your name again.
Yeah, I'm gonna give Eliza a damn heart attack over here. It's at Siraj A Hashmi. That's where you can find me on Twitter. You can find Habibi Power Hour on Rumble. That's Habibi Bros. You can search that. And then I'm on Twitch at Siraj Hashmi. I think those are the main things. I mean, I do have a YouTube channel too, if you like YouTube. I don't know what else to really plug, honestly. I'm just all over the place. I have a locals community. I post on there, but no one ever engages with my content. So It's actually really funny. I have like over 400 people in the locals community. No, I post like something like once every day. Nobody says anything. No one likes it. No one, maybe like one or two people, but it's just really funny to me.
Have you told people to come over there after your launch? Like you have to offer something over there that.
Hold on. All right. So here's the thing. People have made fun of me so much for that locals video.
We make fun of you for everything, Siraj. It's
I
not
know.
I
know it's not an isolated thing, but it's literally every time I think about it, I'm like, wow, nobody has made fun of me more for anything other than that. Like that is the thing that they've made fun of the most of. So I'm like, do I keep plugging it? Like,
yes.
Just let the rust. Okay, I guess.
Hey, that's what the people that first and foremost, that locals video was kind of my fault. Because I was like, oh, make a locals video, like introduce people to your community and tell them to come over and make it seem enticing. I didn't know
you hear that, Habibis? You hear that? We have finally someone other than a Muslim to blame for that video.
I didn't know you were going to say corny stuff, but I thought you looked well and I thought it was presented well. And I'm not going to tell you how to run the content of your brand. All you said was, does it look well? And if you felt like it was good enough to send to me, then yes, to me, it was fine. I thought it looked pretty good. I didn't know that they were going to drag you for 7 months over that video.
I mean, I'm kind of happy they did because this just become another part of the running inside joke.
So why don't you want to boost it more so people talk more trash? Like that's your whole brand.
That's true. And that's the weird thing about my brand is that my brand has so many different layers to it that it's like an onion in Shrek. You know how Shrek says like ogres are like onions. Like, oh, they smell bad. No, they have layers. So that's the brand.
The thing I love about the Habibis is we antagonize you. Your Habibis, they antagonize you relentlessly, dunk on you like relentlessly. But if anybody outside of the squad or crew comes at you, anybody outside of the squad or crew, it's not like in a mean way, but it's like if a blue check comes at you sideways or like claps back on the list or something, the Habibis are intense in defending.
Oh, I know.
So you are like all of the Habibis' brother in a way. I think that's how everybody sort of sees you. But yeah, you should post more. You should talk more about locals. I love it. I mean, I just had that blog. Originally when I had posted over the weekend, it was kind of like, meh, it did okay. But then I posted it again yesterday and it's doing really well. So yeah, I mean, I like using locals a lot, just for different things and testing out different ideas and seeing what fits best for me. But, I don't know. I think
I just learned not to gatekeep.
You don't need to be on every freaking platform that's ever been created by humans ever. Like I'm waiting for you to come up like, hey, check me out on my MySpace.
Challenge accepted, Eliza.
BB, let's make MySpace popping again.
Let's make Friendster popping again. No, let's go back even further. ICQ, AOL Instant Messenger.
Ooh, BB. Do you know how, wait, there's other things like that. But I think going back to the old school one would be the coolest with the sidekick.
Yeah.
T-Mobile sidekick.
Yeah, I remember those.
Well, very well. Siraj, I absolutely love you to death. You told folks where they can check you out. Anything else you want to plug? No.
No, I mean, you want to support my work? Go check out my Twitter. I'll tell you where to go. That's Siraj Hashmi. That's where I made. That's my home. That's where I find myself almost every hour of every day. I'm terminally online and probably have terminal mental illness because of it.
You probably had it going in, but I'm not one to shame.
That's also probably true.
Hey, real quick, I've always wanted to ask you this. Aren't you scared of getting kicked off of Twitter? You really walk the line for terms of service. I know you have your raggedy blue check, which I hope they take away from you just so we're on an even playing field. But do you ever get nervous? Because sometimes I see you tweet stuff where I'm like, that really walks the line to TOS.
No. I
Okay.
actually think so. There are a couple things that I think will make me even more powerful. One, getting kicked off Twitter, and the other thing, which doesn't exist anymore, was me getting fired by the examiner. If one of those two things happened, uh, if they happened at the same time where I got fired from the examiner and also got kicked off Twitter, I think I would probably reach Joe Rogan status by now.
So when you say more powerful, that would imply that you think that you already have power. Are you under the impression that you already have power?
I wield more power than I ever thought I did. I will say that. I don't think I am powerful, but I have. This is weird to say. I know based on my conversations with people and their impression and perception of me is that I somehow have influence enough that even the Muslim community has taken notice and wants no part of me. They want nothing to do with me. And largely it is because of what I think. So when I post that stuff about like literally a nobody in the Arab community or otherwise who's also a sellout, that's because people view me as a sellout. So I mean, there's not really much I look, it's not like I want to kowtow to these people. I think it's important to speak to say what I think and let people judge for themselves whether they agree with me or not. And I'm not going to bend the knee to some orthodoxy or hierarchy within the Muslim community that they all think the same. And especially when I don't agree with them. And especially when they wield a certain influence over the youth to think a certain way about certain people. And I mean, oftentimes I think what they believe, not about like religion, but about politics, is wrong. And I think I think it is not just in some ways anti-American, because I don't really care about what's pro or anti-American, but anti-liberty, anti-freedom. They want to restrict people and put them in, they want to control people. That's ultimately what it is about. And that's kind of what I've learned over the years as a journalist and over COVID, is that it's largely a matter of control. And I just rather people open their minds and believe whatever they want to believe and not let anybody tell them how to live or how to think or what to believe. Let them come to their own decisions. Let them come to their own judgments and consensus.
I think that's one thing that the list does do, that your job on Twitter, I guess, does do really well, is it exposes room for maybe dialogue. The one thing that I loved about the list before we were friends and still do now is that I could kind of go to your profile, see the most wild takes of the day, essentially. And
100%.
literally. And I have water.
If you know, you know.
And if you don't know, it's whatever. But I just dribbled up. I got so much going on right now between the gloves and the whole, there's a lot of things happening on me right now. That I can't even open up a water bottle. But no, I mean, I could go there, but it does open it up for discourse, dialogue, to see what we're talking about, where we want things to go as a society and where we don't want things to go as a society. And there is some influence there, because otherwise folks get stuck in their own, tunnel vision of what their friends or the people that they follow or the people that they think are acceptable, or even what the algorithm is telling them to look at. But
Yeah.
you highlight some of the most wild things that could, be ideas or inspirations that could really shift pop culture moving forward, or culture as a whole, not even just pop culture, but, pop culture, subculture, or, anything, even policy I could see happening. Those ideas start. And what happens with the list is you kind of bring, I don't want to say call it out, but you kind of bring attention to it. You say these folks need to have their phone taken, but then everyone else can kind of say, like, nah, we're not here as a society. Like we're not, we don't agree with this as a society. And so it's kind of cool, because you can kind of see everyone be like, no, we don't agree with this as a society. And there is some power in that. I like to give you a really hard time. But there is some, and
Yes,
I
you
think
did.
I think, I think you've done a great job at doing all those things, and I really, really appreciate it. And so folks can follow Siraj on Twitter. Thanks again for being my guest.
Thank
And
you, Eliza. Really, really appreciate you having me on.
and who do you think did 9/11? No, just kidding. We're not going to get into that now. But for real though. Hey! And if folks want to follow
Chances are they're gonna blame me.
BB, how old were you at 9/11? How old were you when 9/11 happened? 13?
I was 13. Yeah.
Wow. We'll get into that. I'm sure this won't be the only time that you're on my podcast. Hopefully I'll get way better guests between like now and the other time I need to have you on, and you'll just be like the fill-in for when somebody really awesome canceled. But if folks want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Eliza Bleu, at ELIZABLEU. And please follow me on Locals as well. My Locals community is free to sign up. It's a free subscription. You'll be signed up to my email list automatically. And that is eliza.locals.com. So it's ELIZA.locals.com. And if folks want to donate to me to help keep my podcast going for now, because I don't have any sponsorships or any type of advertising, that would be a great way to just kind of help me stay afloat until I get that. Because, we can't all just be like, a shit lib, literally nobody in the Arab community, and a thought leader full time.
Remember that's thought leader, THOT.
Thought. I don't know. Gross. I sound so gross saying that with so much extra spit.
Thought.
Yes. Thought. I don't even want to say it. Anyway, thank you again to my guest, Siraj Hashmi, and we will see you back here at the Eliza Bleu podcast next time. Bye, BB. I'm not going to do it. No, I'm not going to do it. You've never gotten me to do it.